There were 470 games released on the Atari 2600 from 1977 to 1992. Last time we looked at the best of the best. This time we're going to focus on the worst of the worst. The complete crap that's been baking in the hot, hot sun. These games could be used to torture prisoners and terrorists. If you are overly sensitive to terrible games, you are urged to look away and maybe go watch the last official top 10, the best 2600 games. Well, without any more delay, here are the official top 10 worst Atari 2600 games. Number 10, Home Run. This is one of the very first baseball games ever released, and it shows. The game layout is very simple. You have a green screen, 4 white squares for bases with you and your opponent. This game is so simple it can't even follow the basic rules of baseball. There's nobody to cover the bases. There's no catcher. There's no umpire. There's nobody in the outfield or the infield. The pitcher must do everything. The other basic rules apply: 3 strikes for an out and 4 balls for a walk. Defense is vastly overpowered on the easier difficulty setting, so make sure to do that. Hitting the home run is very strange. The game only recognizes it if you hit the ball exactly straight down. 3 strikes, and this game is out. Number 9, Flag Capture. This is a pretty poor excuse for a retail game. It's almost as bad as if tic-tac-toe was on the system. Although there is a 3D tic-tac-toe, and that game is pretty bad, but it does something new and kind of clever, so it stays off the list. This is something you can play at home with some scissors and paper. It's technically a video game as you play for a goal. The goal is to get the flag in as few moves as possible against your opponent. There are different modes. One mode has the flag moving around, which makes it a guessing game. The main mode is to get 15 points before your opponent. There are bomb tiles. If the bomb goes off, you have to go back to the starting space. This game is dry and boring. Minesweeper is much better than this. If you want to play a decent version of this, go play Minesweeper. Number 8, PacMan. Oh my God, this port of the original PacMan is terrible. It's actually an unfinished game. They gave the designer very little time to make it, and it shows. This is the original PacMan. And this is the Atari 2600 version of PacMan. This is the official worst version of PacMan. The maze is really just so boring, and the ghosts are awful. They flicker in and out, and when you eat a power pellet, they don't even have an indication of when they are turning back to normal. This version has many more cheap deaths. Its worst sin is just how ugly and boring it is. If there were more time, the developer could have done an alright job. Mrs. Pac-Man is one of the better games on the system, even if it's not a great representation of the arcade game. The fact is, Atari 2600, it's just not great for Pac-Man. Number 7, Star Fox. No, this isn't the beloved Nintendo franchise. Same name, different game. This is a defender-like shooter. You fly around and collect crystals, and blast enemy ships. The game, as you can see, it looks amazingly bland. Your main objective is to collect crystals, for reasons. I guess they had to come up with something. There's only one enemy ship on screen at a time, and that's actually positive because the game moves way too fast. You can't even move your ship correctly to aim and shoot. It's just really awful. If the game was slowed to a reasonable speed, the game would still be bad. It's just very bland. It's really so simple, and there's just not much to say, so let's move on to number 6. Number 6 is Sorcerer. You play as a sorcerer that battles wizards and creatures that are probably summoned by the wizards, and you must try to take their jewels. You have a floating platform that you ride on, and you shoot lasers at bizarre creatures. They often come in groups of 3, and they come in formation. If you shoot one, they all die. That's Sorcerer. It has a little more imagination than many 2600 games, but that doesn't really help it here. Sorcerer versus Wizards, and collecting a magic item or jewels. It's the beginning of a story, but that's just not much else. This is as bare bones in a dry desert. What else is there to say here? My God, let's just move on. Number 5, Firefly. You play as a firefly. You fly around in gardens, screens with black backgrounds, with a few flowers on the ground. You fire at groups of enemies that often fly in formation in rows of 3. Do you see a pattern with the last 3 games? They all suck. But yes, it's just the way it is. These are all reskins of the same game, and they're all the worst game. It's trash. And that's what you get with these games. These are the games that you torture prisoners with. You play these when you need to punish yourself. These games they're just self-harm. Plain and simple. If you or anyone you know voluntarily plays any of the games on this list for any reason other than educational purposes, then just call a doctor. You need help. Number 4, the Sword Quest Trilogy. This one is cheating somewhat, but it makes sense here. These 3 games are bound together by the power of marketing, and that bond can't and won't be broken. The thing about this entry is it just isn't the games. The games themselves are a mixed bag. They're just too ambitious and cryptic for the simple Atari. This may have worked better in the next generation with the NES and the Master System. These games weren't released as normal store retail items. You had to join the Atari fan club and then buy the game on special order. The most notable thing about this trilogy is the contest that backed it. Each game was going to be a huge event. The best players would get together and have a competition. The winner of the competition would get a special item that was worth over $25,000. There was supposed to be 4 games in the set. Each game would have a special prize, and then the winners from the 4 games would compete for an ultimate prize. This is the most ambitious promotional thing that was ever done with the Atari 2600. It may be the most ambitious promotional stunt for any game, ever. This was either going to be legendarily awesome or a complete train wreck. And it's on this list, so let's take a look at this train wreck. The 3 released games were Earthworld, Fireworld, and Waterworld. There was a winner for the first 2 games, but by the time the 3rd game was released in 1983, the video game crash was in full effect, and Atari was getting hit hard. Waterworld was released, but the contest never happened for that game. Earthworld had a winner, and the prize was an 18-karat gold talisman. It was studded with 12 diamonds, and the 12 stones for all the zodiac signs. The contest was in full swing, and everybody was pumped for the next game, Fireworld. The winner of the Fireworld competition got a chalice made of gold and platinum. It was studded with diamonds, rubies, sapphires, pearls, and green jade. Imagine breaking that out when you're just having some beers with your buddies. Hey, Jim, I don't have any clean glasses, but you could use this old chalice. Yeah, right. The Waterworld prize would have been a gold crown with jewels, and there was an unreleased game called Airworld, and you would have got a gold Philosopher's Stone with more jewels. There was also the ultimate prize. All the previous winners would come back and try to win the sword. The sword has an 18-karat gold handle with jewels encrusted all over. The blade was pure silver, and it was valued at $50,000. This never happened. Only the first 2 prizes were ever released. The remaining prizes were heavily rumored to end up in the hands of a man named Jack Tramiel. At the time of the contest, Atari was not doing well. The company was bought by a man named Jack Tramiel. There is a long saga about this, and it's much too involved for this top 10 list. So I would suggest watching the Jack Tramiel videos by Kim Justice. Each game came with a comic by DC Comics that gave a story for the games. In the games, there are hints that lead to specific panels in the comics. Drawn into the panels is a word. Some words are useful and some are useless. You must play the game to get all the hints, and then decide which words were useful and mail the results and hope you got it right, and then you might get a call back. The games are pretty much set up the same. You play as Mr. Some Guy and go from room to room. You find items along the way and you put the right items in the right rooms and you get hints. This is what I was talking about with the comics. The hints point to the panels and you find the hidden word. There are little mini-games spread throughout. They range from horrible to decent, but nothing really good. This is a weird game. There is so much about this game in the contest that's really cool, but none of it has to do with the games themselves. The games are pretty bad. Even though the games are bad, there's a cool concept about crossing over with a comic book, and admittingly that is cool. The contest was a great concept, and they gave away 2 of the 5 prizes, so it's not a total loss. But not completing the contest really tarnished this series. This could have been an honorable mention for the top 10 if they went through with the contest, but now it's in the bottom 5. Number 3, Skeet Shoot. Skeet Shoot does a pretty good job of portraying the sport that it's based on. That's the best thing I can think of to say about this game. There's nothing about the sport of skeet shooting that really works as the main concept for a video game. You shoot at a single flying target at a time, the skeets. You shoot at them. If you hit the target, you get a point. Okay, moving on. Number 2, Karate. This is quite possibly the worst fighting game ever made. It may also be the first. All I can really say about this is to stay away. If you attempt to play this, your brain will turn to mush. You will lose motor control. If you play any longer than half an hour, your bowels will be next. It's just best to stay away. It's awful. It's a 2600 game now, so that point could be forgiven if it had something fun in its gameplay, but it doesn't. It really doesn't. There is no redeeming this horrid, putrid mess of a fighting game. You have no idea if your attack or your opponent's attack will even connect. It's just hit a button and hope for the best. You get 4 attacks. There's high punch, high kick, low punch, low kick. This game sucks souls, plain and simple. Play this for a while if you just want to lose your mind. Number 1, Slot Machine. There's certain things that are out of consideration for real criticism. The basic programming cart is an example. It's not a game, it's something to program in BASIC. It's fine for what it is. There's the kids' educational titles like Basic Math. It's not really a game, it's a learning tool. Again, it's fine for what it is. These carts aren't in consideration for this list. Slot Machine is technically a game. You play slot machines at casinos and other gambling establishments. It's fun because you have a chance to win money. The basic concept of a slot machine is probably the laziest, stupidest idea to translate for a main concept for a full game. One slot machine to play for eternity. And it gives out nothing. No stakes and no fun. This game is the literal embodiment of hell.